One morning I walked outside and found concrete where my grass used to be. Not a path. Full, heavy driveway. Poured leveled, fresh tire marks leading straight from the road across my property. A brand new SUV sat on the edge like it belonged there. The neighbor waved from behind his fence, smiling like he'd done me a favor. Oh, the HOA gave permission. We cleared it with them. That smile was the start of everything. Because nobody asked me. And when someone builds on your land and lies about permission, you don't walk away. You call the law. By dusk the county sheriff rolled up. The HOA lawyer showed up with a binder, and I realized this was no ordinary property spat. It was a test, and I was ready to fail it. I still remember the sound of the cement truck. It started as a low rumble, then a measured growl that became the soundtrack to a small war. I stepped onto my lawn and watched men in work boots pour concrete along a line. I'd walked 1,000 times with my dog. They waved at the neighbor. Joking. Casual. And the neighbor waved back like he'd been given a medal. This lane had been my lawn for 16 years. I mowed it, I watered it, I planted maples for shade. My deed was clear and recorded with the county. My property line was marked by stones I'd placed myself when my kids were small. I knew where my land ended and the public right-of-way began. So when the neighbor, call him Tom, started putting up stakes and hauling gravel across those stones, I walked over. Calm, measured. He greeted me like this was normal. Morning, he said. We got approval from the HOA. It'll be better for traffic, everyone agreed. From the I asked. On my land. He smiled that practice smile. They said the community needed better access. You should be grateful. That word tasted wrong. Everything about his tone screamed entitlement. I asked him to stop. He shrugged. Said the HOA had the paperwork and that I could take it up with them. I went home and waited for proof. The next day he had a copy of a typed letter. HOA board approval. With signatures. The signatures looked official dates, titles, a seal graphic. But something in my gut told me to look closer. I photographed the document and sent it to the county clerk. I called the HOA board listed on the letter. One board member answered, live, surprised. We didn't approve anything. Who sent this? Her voice dropped. Send it to me right now. That's the moment this stopped being neighbor drama and became a crime scene. I called the county records office. The clerk pulled up a permit log and searched the parcel number. No permit for a driveway. No HOA authorization on record. The type approval he'd shown me, not on file. The county inspector told me to secure my property and file a complaint. Tom's phone calls to contractors didn't stop the truck with the cement. The men had already poured a strip of concrete crossing my property. They tamped, smoothed, and walked off like it was all right. The smell of fresh mortar filled the air. My grass was ruined under a gray slab. Neighbors started to pick sides. Some whispered they'd never want to cross a board's wrath. Others offered to help me measure the line. The internet lit up with questions about property law. I felt something useful beneath the anger clarity. This was not about a driveway. This was about proof. That afternoon, I drove to the county recorder's office with copies of everything. The clerk printed parcel maps, deed lines, and an older survey from when I bought the house. It showed, in black and white, exactly where my property ended. The new driveway crossed 2 feet into my land for its entire length. Back home I posted a polite notice on my front gate do not entr. Arriva e parper y. I took video of the slab, the truck tracks, the men's license plates. I had timestamps. Timestamps are facts. I uploaded everything to a secure folder and started calling for help. When the county inspector finally arrived 2 days later, he stood with his boots on my concrete and looked at the grade, the lack of permit, and the encroachment. He shook his head. This should not be here, he said. We'll issue a stop work order, and the owner of this parcel will be cited if it's confirmed. Don't let anyone use it. I felt a small victory. But Tom didn't look worried. He still had that smile, slow and smug. That night I printed out every relevant document, my deed, the county parcel map, the inspection notice, and the HOA board's email denying any approval. I clipped them to a thick folder and slept with it on my kitchen table. The next morning a white SUV pulled up. But this time it wasn't the contractor. It was the sheriff's cruiser. 2 deputies stepped out, polite but professional. They explained that a complaint had been filed and they needed to talk to both parties. Tom came out, arms open, still certain. I handed the deputy my folder. He nodded, reading through the papers. The way he looked at Tom, just one long look, was all I needed to see. Tom's face went hard. But the real shock came when the HOA lawyer arrived with a different binder and a list of signatures. He told the deputies the HOA had indeed given permission. He said Tom had been given written consent and that, if the county wanted to enforce anything, it would have to follow due process. He smiled at me like I was some inconvenience. The deputy stepped back and said, "Clear, we will investigate. For now. No one should use that driveway until we sort ownership." Tom's friends kept driving over it anyway. That night, I watched headlights cross my yard under the slab. And in the beam I saw my lawn's scars turn white under concrete. I recorded the license plates and the vehicles returning to their homes. Enforcement existed on paper, but in practice, momentum and money moved faster. The next day a local attorney I'd contacted called back. He had a way to force the issue a temporary restraining order and an emergency hearing. If the judge saw the deeds, the inspector's note, and the forged HOA letter, the driveway could be declared an unlawful encroachment and be ordered removed immediately. That's when it got personal. Because once you call the law into a pry, the theater turns loud. Tom became clever. He changed the signatures on the letter. He produced fresh receipts. He started telling neighbors a different story, that I was the unreasonable one, trying to stop community improvements. But I had the county, my deed, and a folder of facts. I had video of his trucks crossing my property. I had the HOA board's voicemail. I had neighbors willing to testify that they hadn't seen any vote or meeting about this. The truth sat like a stone on the table. I filed for the emergency hearing. The judge set a date fast. I slept badly that week, thinking of the concrete slab that sat like a wound over my grass. But I felt ready. Because when someone builds on your land, and then tries to lie about permission, you have to do two things: document everything, and bring the right people into the room. Part 2. Court, confrontation, and the forged paper trail. Courtroom lights are harsh. The air tasted like new leather and disinfectant. I walked in with the folder that had become my armor. Deed copies, county survey, inspection report, the HOA board's contramail, timestamped videos, license plate photos, and a printout of the forged approval letter. The judge looked tired but steady. I gave my statement, clear and controlled. I explained the timeline, the trucks, the lack of permit, and the encroachment. I handed over the folder. The judge scanned through the documents, pausing at the typed letter with the signatures. His eyes narrowed. He asked for time to review. Tom's lawyer stood and argued that the HOA had acted in the community's interest, that the county had been informed, and that ripping out the driveway would cause unnecessary hardship. He produced affidavits from a few neighbors and a contractor receipt. He turned the room into a chorus: community, convenience, progress. Then the HOA lawyer spoke. He pulled out a binder and swaggered across the floor of the courtroom, placing copies of HOA minutes and purported approvals on the stand. He flipped to a page, the void filled with initials and a stamp, and said, "Your Honor, this is the board approval." The judge leaned forward. "Where did these documents come from?" he asked. The HOA lawyer's fingers tightened on the papers. "From our records, Your Honor. I requested that the court allow a forensic examination of the signatures. It was a long shot, but forgery is forgery, and signatures can be analyzed." The judge agreed to the examination and ordered a temporary injunction. The driveway could not be used until the signatures were verified, and the county finished its review. He also ordered counsel for the HOA and Tom to produce the original records and to appear at a follow-up hearing. After court, the deputy drove me home and said, "You did the right thing bringing all this." He warned that these cases get ugly because they're personal. People double down when they feel cornered, he said. He wasn't wrong. Over the next week, specialists were called in. A forensic document examiner compared handwriting and signatures. The county records clerk searched email archives, verifying that no meeting minutes matched the alleged approval meeting. The inspector sent an updated report, noting the driveway's continued encroachment. A local reporter picked up the story, their camera crew filming the slab sitting on my lawn, while I gave a short statement, "Follow the law here." Tom's demeanor changed. The smile was gone. He looked smaller in that SUV. confined by the reality that courts and county rec had been to charm. Neighbors whispered. Someone who had driven over the slab stopped in the middle of their driveway and said, "I wish I'd looked into it first." Then the forensic report came back. The document examiner's findings were a knife. The signatures on the HOA approval letter did not match the known signatures of board members. The typed memo had edits suggesting it was created after the fact, and metadata from the file showed creation dates inconsistent with the letter's claimed timeline. Armed with that, the county prosecutor stepped in. Forgery and fraud had escalated the matter beyond civil dispute. They served Tom and the HOA with a notice that criminal charges could follow if the forged documents were used to obstruct the county's orders. The deputies served the order in person, watching as Tom tried to protest. On the morning the prosecutor visited, Tom's contractor packed machinery into trucks and left. The neighbor's loyal friends stopped crossing the slab. The driveway had become a public spectacle. People who had once been indifferent now stood in doorways watching. At the follow-up hearing, the judge read the forensic report aloud. He turned pages slowly and then looked directly at Tom. The courtroom was astonishingly quiet. "Mr. Harris," the judge said, "the court finds significant evidence suggesting the document presented as HOA approval contains forged signatures. The county stop work order remains in effect. Moreover, given the gravity of these findings, I am ordering the immediate rival encroaching driveway and referral of the matter to the county prosecutor for further action." Tom's face went pale. He tried to speak, but the judge cut him off. "This court will not tolerate attempts to circumvent property law through fraud." Outside the courthouse, a crew came with a backhoe. They cut the edge of the slab where it sat over my property. The contractor worked with the inspector standing by. Concrete dust mixed with sunlight. When the slab fractured along the property line, I felt something like the air leaving a held breath. The next days were frenetic. The county filed charges for forgery against an unknown person. Their investigation continued into who had created and circulated the falsified letter. The HO board sent an internal email firing their treasurer, who had been listed as the signer on the fake document. The local paper ran an article about civic responsibility and property rights. People who had once said nothing suddenly offered apologies. I won't pretend it was satisfying in a movie way. There were phone calls, angry texts, and threats from those who had supported Tom. There were also neighbors who brought over coffee and said, softly, "Good for you." I felt vindicated but also tired. The fight had burned energy and trust. Still, when the county inspector stamped the final paperwork, acknowledging the driveway's illegal removal and my intact property line, I walked out and stood on my grass, barefoot, feeling the earth warm under me. The stones I'd placed years ago still marked the boundary. Proof mattered. Paper mattered. The law mattered.